Hi, I'm James Spenser from Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video. I'm here to talk about the high gravity electric brew-in-a-bag system. Now what I want to do is show you how to set up the system for the first time when you first get it right out of the box. Now you'll notice that I've got my system set up here on the stovetop, and that just happens to be the best place in the configuration of my kitchen for it to be. You don't have to have it on the stovetop. I'm not going to use any of the heat from the stove. So if you've got a countertop or a table or somewhere where you want to put it where you have easy access to your electricity, you can do that. Just make sure you have some thermal padding or a thermal barrier between the kettle and the surface that it's sitting on. So what do we have? We have a 62 quart Bayou Classic kettle, and to go in that we have a sort of a basket or maybe a colander of sorts to have your grain and your bag, because it wouldn't be brew-in-a-bag brewing without your nylon bag, which also comes with the system. Now, your system may not be exactly like this, because you may have gone on the High Gravity website and chose different options, different variables for your system when you bought it. But don't worry if your system is not exactly like this. The general principles should still apply. Now inside my kettle I have a Blickman boil coil heating element, which I'm really excited about because that thing looks like it should pump out the heat. And there are a couple of safety notes that you want to think about when you're working with electricity and brewing. For instance, a High Gravity recommends that you have a GFCI breaker to connect your system to. And you want to make sure that you don't energize the heating element when it's dry. Make sure that it is completely immersed in water or wort before you turn it on. You don't want to run your heating element when it's dry. Also connected to the kettle is a spigot with a ball valve on it to lead from your kettle to your pump. Now the pump is the heart of your system. Now yours may not be exactly like that. Again, you may have your own pump that you already had to use with the system. Now if you do, Dave from High Gravity recommends that you rotate the head of your pump 90 degrees so that the intake is on the bottom and the output is on the top. Now if the pump is the heart of the system, the brain of the system is the High Gravity EBC SV controller. It stands for Electric Brewing Controller Single Vessel. And you notice it has switches, on-off switches for the heat element and the pump. And I don't have it turned on right now, but it also has a digital readout that will show you the current temperature of your water or wort and your target temperature of where you want it to be. It also has a knob on the side of it to control the strength of the heat coming from the element. For example, if you are heating up your strike water for the first time, you probably want to crank that up and put out a lot of heat to the element. Once you reach that and you're mashing, you probably want to back that off a bit so you're not having all that strength, all that high heat in there with the grain. Now, what are the next steps? To get the wort from the kettle to the pump and vice versa, Dave has included a handy packet here with our connectors. You have the vessel connectors to go to the kettle and the hoses, and then you have a pump output and a pump input connector as well. And you also have the band clamps to clamp the hose onto those connectors. Now, speaking of hose, what you've got here is a single 6-foot long length of heat-resistant hose. Now, why didn't Dave cut this up to the proper lengths before sending it out to you? Well, he knows that every brewer is different and everybody might have a slightly different setup. So what we're going to have to do is cut the hose to the proper lengths for our needs. I think that's pretty cool. So what we want to do is have the least amount of hose possible. So we want to put our pump fairly close to our kettle, and you'll see also that I have the pump and the controller on sort of a slip-proof mat because I've got this stone countertop here. I don't want things sliding around. So what I'm going to do is connect the connectors to the kettle and the pump, and measure the hose and cut them and attach the connectors, and we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Now, if you're worried about leaks, you might want to use some Teflon tape on the threaded connectors. That should help ensure against that. So there you go. That was the hardest part, and it was easy. There is one thing that I neglected to mention. There are 3 90-degree angle connectors that go onto the hoses and 1 straight one. The straight one goes into the top of the pump, and the other 90-degree ones go in the other places. So here I got a short length of hose coming from the kettle to the pump, and a fairly short piece of hose going to the lid, and there is enough slack where I can set that aside if I need to. Now, one thing that I neglected to mention as well is that there is a spray nozzle to go in the top of the lid. Not the top of the lid, the top of the kettle, which is the lid. There we go. Easily done. Now the hard part's over. The easy part begins. And again, at this point, the controller is unplugged. So we plug the pump into the outlet on the controller. And your heating element may not have a detachable cable, but mine does. So I'm going to attach the detachable cable. And then we plug the cable for the heating element into the controller. Now, again, you don't want to energize your heating element if it is dry. Now, I don't have the controller plugged in, so there's no risk of me accidentally turning on the heating element while there's no liquid in the kettle. So a safety tip might be if you're in a position where the kettle doesn't need to be energized, you might want to just go ahead and unplug it. So what I want to do now is test my connectors. So what I'm going to do is put some water in the kettle and cover that heating element, plug everything in, and we'll test the system out. All right, so I've got enough water to cover the heating element properly. There's one connection that I need to make, an important connection, is to connect the controller to the temperature sensor. And that's just a quick disconnect there. So the temperature controller is in this little T here in the top. Now it's important that we make this connection because the controller will not turn on the heating element if it does not sense the temperature sensor. So even when you're boiling, the controller needs to be connected to the sensor in the lid. Now, we're ready to test. This is exciting. So what we want to do is open our ball valve to the kettle. Water now flows down under the pump, and we turn on the pump with the pump switch. That's encouraging. We can look, and the spray nozzle is spraying, so the water is circulating. Now, again, it's important to know that the temperature sensor, since it's right here, it will not get the temperature of the water unless there's water passing through it. So if the pump is off, you're not going to get an accurate reading on your temperature sensor. Now that the pump is on and the water is circulating, we're going to turn on the heat. And when you switch on the heat button, your digital readout comes to life there. Now on the top we see the current temperature of the water. Now on the bottom you have the set temperature of what you want your water to be. Right now it's at 155. If I want to change that, I simply tap the up button, and a little, see that little green dot flashing there? That indicates that you can change the temperature. So I'll hit it again, get the little dot flashing, and then let's raise the temperature a few degrees to 160. And when that little green dot stops blinking, then we'll know that that's the new set temperature. And that's it. The big old heating element in there is heating up the water, and we can see the temperature climb as we go. And again, if we're heating strike water temperature, we want to turn the intensity up on the side with the control knob. So now we're getting the highest output of heat from the heating element that's possible. So it's working. None of my connections appear to be leaking, which is good. And everything seems good to go. So the next step is to brew a batch of beer. And that's going to be in the next video. Happy brewing, everybody. Woohoo!